All right. So today we have a very special guest with me. I'm lucky to call him my mentor, my friend, and a former colleague. And he used to be a customer as well. So I know that Hugo has worn many hats in my life, and it's an honor for me to have Hugo Welch.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Honestly, it really is. I've known 12 years now.
Yeah.
You know, and I started off back in the Atlanta Country Club, or even before that in Capital City.
Yeah.
When I kind of came across North Star by accident. In CMA World Conference, and brought that back to my club. And we had a software that remained nameless that we felt we needed to replace. And then North Star, eventually came to Capital City. I left Capital City, as you know, went to Atlanta Country Club. Said we had to have North Star at Atlanta Country Club. Installed it. Then you came and actually installed everything for us. And, and the rest is history. We've learned each other since then.
And it was my absolute pleasure to demo you the product at CMA. And I think Imran went to Capital City Club and did the demo. And Matt, and I think back then there was a controller who was planning on resigning. And I think Leslie was the one who was coming on board back then, as you know. And they took their sweet time, and you being you, we said, okay,
we're all in.
We can make way with it. And I remember.
I have to say this. I'm going to interrupt you because you're doing great. But you made the show. I mean, it really was. I was confident because I got to know you at the CMA that if it comes in, I put the right person here to make it work. So it was that symbiotic relationship that really made everything work for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is the reason why I always say that you are a product of people around you. Nobody is a self-made person. Like people like Hugo and everybody else in the industry help North Star as well as myself to grow into the company we are as well as the person I am. So thank you very much for people for the consistent support we have provided over the years.
Well, thank you. I wanted to be here.
So first I think we would like to talk about your early days, like where were you born?
Gosh, way back then. Well, I'm 66, so I'm going to have to kind of dust off a lot of old memories.
I want to look that good when I'm 66.
Well, it's years of work. Plastic surgeon. No, I'm only kidding. Well, I was born in London, way back when. I'm technically a Cockney. Because I was born within the sound of Bow Bells, and that Bow is a church. And if you can hear the Bow Bells in your neighborhood, you're technically a Cockney. So I can say that, even though I didn't sound like a Cockney. But anyway, I was born in London, and spent some time there. My family moved out to the country. We lived on a lake out in the country for a while. It was great. We had a kind of a blessed existence.
Awesome. So what was your father's occupation, and how many siblings?
Gosh, I got five. Well, one of five brothers. One of five brothers, essentially. I'm the eldest, so of course I knew everything, and I was in charge, at least for a while. My dad was a naval architect. My mom was a physiotherapist. So they were around, but away a lot. Nanny looked after us when we were young, for a long time.
Privileged boys?
I guess so. We were fortunate in that sense. And my, Nanny was a wonderful influence on all of us. There's some great stories about her. I won't bore you with that one now. But, and then, high school, left high school, almost went to naval school. And military school. And I managed to narrowly squeak my way out of that.
Why?
Gosh, over there, when you go to high school, or equivalent high school, you're 11 years old. You've got to make choices at 11 years old. Where you're going to go and what your stream of life's going to be. So, my family's, go from way back, military. My grandfather was engineer of the fleet, so there's a big push to go in the Navy. So I went to the tour of the school, terrifying. I mean, just, huge school, rows of beds, getting up cold showers in the morning. So I managed to weasel my way out of that. Eventually go to a regular school.
So being in a household where there were five boys, and you being the eldest, and you have a nanny who's disciplining you and taking care of you, right? So how was it different from home and going to this naval school? Well,
the naval school, was scary. It's boarding school. You're 11 years old. You really want to, at least I did. leave and pack up and go. And it was very austere, you know, but, you know, my father had been in the Navy, my grandfather had been in, my great-grandfather, you know, lineage. So it was kind of like an expected thing to do. But for me, it really wasn't my calling. You know, even 11 years old, I realized that. You know, I could have gone to my brother's schools, but, you know, it was a colloquial school full of monks and so on. Again, wasn't my cup of tea.
So did anybody end up going to naval school out of?
No, we didn't. No, not at all.
It's because the other brother did not go. We didn't.
I don't think so. I think it was just, you know, I think my parents realized it really wasn't our calling, really. You know? So no, I managed to squeak out of all that really, and have a very, you know, usual, you know, high school experience really. Left there. But let me back up a little bit, because my path really kind of grew up with culinary hospitality. That was my kind of calling, I guess. And how I realized that, well, I realized very slowly, but there was a wonderful TV program on that I loved. It was called Galloping Gourmet.
Galloping Gourmet.
Galloping Gourmet. You can probably Google it. It's back in the 70s. You know, you have cooking shows now forever. I mean, you can see it on every single food channel. This was really the first ever. Back in 71, 72. And I was just enthralled. And I would sit down, and he would go through these elaborate recipes, and I would sit down and take them down longhand.
Oh, wow.
You know, 2 ounces of sugar, some cream, blah, blah, blah. And then I would recreate it. I'd say, Mom, let's go shopping, go shopping and recreate these dishes.
Oh, that's awesome.
She loves it. And my mom was a great cook, my grandma was a great cook. And it progressed, and eventually I could just watch the show and didn't have to take down notes. I just knew how to do it. You know, at least I had the cues to do it. And so eventually I would cook for my parents' dinner parties.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, so I cooked them with a filet, when we were doing cream sauces and all that kind of stuff, and just had a passion for it. You know, and then I would kind of serve them dinner in the dining.
Oh, wow.
You know. So it just felt like a kind of natural thing for me. It's hospitality. It was kind of great. I didn't know it was cool. Really.
Oh, wow.
You know. And I left high school, didn't really know what to do, you know, hadn't really thought about it, really. And my dad had a very good friend at the Cafe Royal in London, in Regent Street, which is a lovely ancient,
not Casino Royale.
Not the casino, but it's, I mean, it was certainly.
Cafe Royale.
No, Cafe Royal. Yeah, it's, you know, it had been around since, gosh, 1860.
Oh,
so, you know, very institutional, you know. So my dad called up and said, look, my son would love to come into a Starbucks with you, you know, spend a month with you and go through every single department and kind of learn what it's all about. And I said, okay. And I went up there and it was, again, quite terrifying because this is real life. You know, people, this is real jobs. I'm there kind of organizing papers and following people around and then seeing how it all works. And part of that was to go into the kitchen and work as the lowest level of cook. Healthcare essentially.
And how old were you back then?
17.
17. Okay.
17, yeah. So you know,
it's like finishing high school.
Finishing high school around there. And in the kitchen there with all my whites on and and having to get dressed up and do all the line up with the chef, and the chef was terrifying. This red-headed chef Kennedy, he was, you know, an amazing chef. But it's all very scary. But I loved it. Ended up just absolutely adoring it. Awesome. And, so that's where it all started.
So let's backtrack a little bit. Tell me about your relationship with your mom, because as you know, you've heard me talking about this a lot. That you know, brave women, they give birth to brave men. So when I look at the bravery of an individual, I don't look at them like, you know, they're fighting with the lions. It's like fighting with the fear. Right? So every time I have an interaction with you, I know that you're very respectful to women in general. And it always gives me the idea that, you know, your mom played a great role in your life. So tell me about your relationship with your wife, with your mom.
Well, that's, you know, gosh, I mean, it was everything, essentially, you know, growing up. Your mom is your world, you know. Dad was around, but obviously even back in that kind of era, yes, he was involved, but not to the degree my mom was in everything that we did. You know, And again, my mum was there, but not always there. Our nanny was there, you know. So again, our nanny was a very powerful figure, you know, in our lives, you know. But together, you know, we grew up in this kind of matriarchal, you know, at least most of the day, kind of society.
Right.
You know, and as we got older, I mean, obviously, you know, almost as his age, can you imagine 5 boys?
Oh yeah.
Just feeding, clothing, disciplining, making sure everything's you're there on time. And I can't imagine. Well, I can. I've got 4 kids, so I kind of get it. But I can't imagine just, you know, what she went to get there. So I have tremendous respect in hindsight, even more so, looking back at it. Thinking, now I'm going through this or being through this. What it must have been able to do that. So we're incredibly close. Obviously, she passed away 20 years ago now, but
so I figured that.
But again, my grandmother's, you know, very involved in this too. So the matriarchal aspect of our family is very strong.
Oh, that's good.
You know, so, and I think that helps us because obviously growing up in a largely male household, you know, then you get married, you've got to learn how to speak to women,
absolutely,
and how they work and how they function and everything else.
So, you know, you being a dad of 3 beautiful ladies now, I've seen.
Thank you, yes. Well, thank God for her good genes, because they've been horrendous otherwise.
I mean, I've seen your son, he's as handsome as you are.
He is.
I've seen your pictures with him, you do a lot of activities together. So one thing I truly believe, and I want you to shed some light on it, that I believe that the confidence in a woman comes from the dad. So if you look at your nanny, if you look at your mother, and if you look at your daughters, do you think you played a huge role in the life of the women you're responsible for in terms of giving them the confidence they need? And that's kind of the responsibility of a man, give the confidence to their daughters, right? Because it comes from their father, not really from their husbands.
Right.
So what do you have to say about that?
That's a very good question. Well, the mother is a huge part of their life because, you know, she's there to, you know, particularly in my profession, because I was usually working. I had to get into soccer practice and homework and school meetings and everything else. So, I mean, I can't take much, you know, glory in what I did so much as really what she has done to get the girls to the point where they are. But I think having a strong male figure, when I say strong, someone who has integrity, you know, is respectful, you know, is not a loud person and a violent person, but it's just a gentle strength, you know, a steady rudder. I think that's the best I could do. I'm proud of probably I've introduced them to great music, taught them how to cook great food, experience great food, experience great hospitality. So I think it rubs some certain things that are very precious to me onto them. You know, whether that be a curse or a blessing. But I think just having a steady relationship at home with your wife, because it really is, yes, it's both together. Yes, it is separate, but ultimately it's that global thing within your house.
So how was the structure at home? Like they both were working, but in terms of making their decision for their own professions. Your parents, as well as helping you in making decision for your life. How was the dynamic at home?
Well, it's interesting. And this could be my parents. They all went to boarding school growing up, so they didn't have a family experience at home. It wasn't beyond holidays, you know, from school. So they really weren't involved too much in my education. You know, beyond being there for whatever I need. Not to the degree that we are now. I feel we're very involved.
With your kids?
With our kids, in every single aspect. There's no wiggle room, you know. And we just didn't have it growing up. You know, we were free range, essentially. You know, we had, you know, fields and country around us and a lake in the backyard. We were gone for the day. I mean, there was no cell phone. I mean, you were gone. You know, I mean, I hope they come back. You know, and we did because we were hungry. You know.
But were you good boys, like, or were you creating trouble?
No, we're all good. I mean, we're all relatively close. I mean, there are 5 of us, and it's probably a year and a half. Well, in fact, between my last 2 brothers, it's less than a year apart. So we're all very close in age. We all get on great. We're brothers and friends.
That's awesome.
But I'm quite sure we had our moments. But we weren't terrible kids, and we had plenty to do. And because everywhere we went, we were kind of an invasion force. 5 boys of us.
Yeah, you can't mess with them.
Absolutely. Well, family, absolutely. We've had many a good time together.
Yeah, that's good. It's very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So growing up, you really did not need friends apart from your brothers, right? Because you had friends at home.
We had friends at home. Again, my younger brother's quite a bit younger than me, at that time. So, and that's such a disparity. If they're 5 and you're 10, I think it's not that much, but really it's a huge disparity in age. But as we got older, we got closer.
Yeah.
As we all matured and our frontal lobes developed, we got closer together. But no, so I mean, overall, we had a very, very. I mean, I love my growing up. It was the best time, and I reflect upon it a lot. And I think having that strength of family and cohesion at home growing up, and that kind of really a safety net, whatever it is, that makes it work. You try and emulate that into your next life, into this life. And you can take good points of it, and you can take points where you I might do something differently. And you might arrive back at the same point, because guess what? You mature and I realized what I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got here for a reason.
Yeah. As a smart person, you learn from all your experiences. Some you want to follow, and some you make sure you don't follow.
Exactly.
Right? As long as you're learning from them, you don't follow them.
Yeah, you've got mentors and anti-mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And this is a great thing about Hugo. I may say something in like 2 sentences, and Hugo may say it in 1 word. This is who he is.
Well, he speaks 5 languages. So
5 languages of love.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about your move to the United States. What happened? Like, it must be a terrible thing for you to leave your 5 brothers. You're so close to your mom, dad, and then move here. So what made you move here? How long ago this happened? And tell me the whole story.
Well, again, great question. And there's a kind of a pre-animal to that, because when I left school and I left Boodles, where I kind of started in my club career, hospitality career, and I took my gap year, and from traditional in the UK to do that, and I went to Africa, and I went there for 6 months. It ended up being 2 years.
Oh wow, I think that's a big gap.
It's a big gap. Had a ball, and obviously learned a whole new experience and just independence and living on whatever you could scrape together. And seemingly living on nothing. I don't know how I made it, but we did it. So Africa, went to South Africa.
Oh, South Africa. And that must be really dangerous.
No, yes, no. No, it wasn't. It was dangerous everywhere else, but it was far away as I can go.
That is a long goal.
Well, why not? And I had some friends down there, which really helped. Some very dear friends as well. So that helped, kind of freshen a little bit. But once you get there, the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want to do. Yeah. So that kind of started my kind of wanderlust for travel. So eventually I had to kind of stop partying and come back to London.
So tell me about the thought process, you being somebody who was born and raised in London, city life, right? And diversified, right? London's very diversified. And you talk about curry all the time, right?
I love curry.
Absolutely. So going from there to South Africa, what was it in your mind going to South Africa? Just because it's far?
Well, I think I was hankering for another experience. And just to back up a little bit, when I left Boodles, I was poised for becoming secretary in one of the clubs, at some point. But back then, unless the secretary died or retired, there's very few spaces came up or come up. So I thought, well, let's, while there's a hiatus here, let me go to Africa. And just happened to have friends down there. So it was a leap, but not a huge leap. But I was hankering for just a new experience, something new that can get the juices flowing.
Yeah. So the idea was to go into that new country experience. At the same time, you were thinking of joining a country club over there?
No, not joining a club, but I mean, are you working at a club?
Working at a club, yeah.
I got there, and coming from city clubs, I mean, London is a huge city club area, and it started there really. And I wasn't familiar with country clubs. They don't have city clubs over there. They're all golf clubs or tennis clubs and so on and so forth. So I really wasn't familiar with that particular aspect of it. And I was really having too much fun, So I became a salesman.
Oh,
I was the worst salesman in the world.
What were you selling?
I was selling mathematical programs. I'm good at math.
I thought you said math.
Oh, yeah. No,
Mathematical programs, okay.
no.
For a second I was like, what?
The mathematical programs.
Okay. Right.
I made some money. I did pretty well with it.
Yeah.
So it kind of fed the beast,
Okay.
kept me working, but enough that I didn't really want to do anything else.
Okay.
So it was a balance of income to pleasure ratio. So I did that. Then I exhausted that after a couple of years. I've got to get back and just really muck it.
Okay.
I'm 25. I really got to get going.
Okay.
So I came back to London with literally, I think I had £300 and 20 cigarettes. I can't remember, like that.
Okay.
And had to start again. So I went back to the parents' house, which you never really want to do.
What was their reaction like? Were you in contact with them for 2 years? This is before cell phone era, right?
Oh, you were cool. In even Western. So no, I think my mum's very happy to see me back. They're all, I'm sure. But it was good to be back, and I had to start again. So I've always gone through these different phases of I call them new lives. So when I came here, it was a new life. So I'm starting again. I'm cleaning the slate, and I'm going to start again. And I've always kind of enjoyed that. And so this really kind of got that kind of flavor going. So I came back, $300, 200 cigarettes, and I had to go get enough clothes to get a job. I got a job that a friend of mine gave me, which changed my kind of whole perspective on hospitality, essentially.
Okay.
I started in a company called Tony Roma's.
Tony Roma's.
It's a place for ribs.
Okay.
And over here, they're really laughing. But this is the only one that was owned by Tony Roma.
Okay.
So we've got some hair and all that kind of stuff. And it was in London, and it was a highfalutin place. You go there, and it's all furs and mafia and everything else. So, 600 covers a night, and it was a beast of an operation. Yeah. So I had to learn inventory control, how many ways that people swindle bars, how people get all sorts of stuff that I would never have learned, didn't learn at school or even at the club I was training. So I got a crash course in reality. Very quickly. So it was great. I took that with me and learned.
How many years did you work there?
Gosh, maybe a year, maybe 14 months.
Oh, 14 months?
Yeah, very quickly.
Okay.
Then I was recruited to go to a rank hotel. I started a new kind of restaurant there with a group of people, which was great. It was kind of a cafe-style brasserie. Got to meet, I met Chuck Berry. Big rock and roll guy. But anyway, again, using that, all I learned from Tony Roma's, inventory control, all the training manuals, I was writing training manuals, doing all the standards, procedures, everything else like that. So, just loved it.
So inventory controls were software back then or no? No software?
It was actually software. I mean, it was
spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets and so on and so forth. But it really was learning, weights and measures. How many shots come out of it, how many, what's our profit margin, what are we putting into this, what are we taking out of it, what's our sales ratios, what's our inventory turnover, all the stuff that's, I really hadn't been taught, which is amazing at school.
Absolutely.
So it was very, very good for me. And really helped me ultimately when I came to America, because it's an American company and this is how America operates. So very, very fundamental for me coming into this country. Knowing that information.
So is this the same advice you give to your kids or any young individual who's going through school right now to go through this exercise of visiting a country, be on your own for some time? And then, experience, how to survive in a country with no money.
Absolutely, that's it. In fact, recently, my youngest daughter, who was in her second year at UGA. Before she went to school, she had a kind of a gap period.
Yes.
I think I talked about it. And so we said, okay, go to London. We'll fund all that for you. Have some fun, get a job. And I had a wonderful friend of mine, Charles Pullen, at the cafe at the River Cafe, an amazing restaurant. And he was very, very kind to give her a job. And she was a host there, and she would travel across London backwards and forwards, the dead of night, get the job done, and go back. And so she grew up very quickly, by herself as a young 18-year-old. And towards the end of that, I said, okay, well, let's go travel. So she went to Italy, Spain, and all over the place by herself.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she came back, and this is
6 months?
No, 3 months.
2 months.
Long enough. But she came back far more mature. I think if you push the envelope, and you're not afraid to go to the next step. I can do this, I've done this, I can go to the next step. So it's all incremental. So now she's at UGA, she said, I want to go study in Florence.
Oh. What does she want to study?
She's doing marketing and that sort of thing. So I'm probably over there for her in that realm. So we're talking about it today. So she's now already thinking that's her horizon. It's not like I'm going to go to, Cobb County and do this. No, I'm going to go to Florence and I want to do this. So it just broadens your horizons. And I think going to Africa and doing that as a young man, and again having my boundaries pushed out, means that the move to America really wasn't. It wasn't. But it wasn't scary to consider that also.
So what is one significant thing you remember about being in South Africa, which you love about South Africa?
Well, this is true, I think, is when you've gone to Africa, they say there's a heartbeat there. And once you go there, you have to go back. And it's very true. I think we all started there. It's sort of funny. Common knowledge that we all kind of left from there and went to the various corners of the world. So I think there's something there that draws you back. So one of my goals is to go back next year and volunteer for maybe a couple of weeks in a rhino and elephant sanctuary.
Oh, that's nice.
And give something back in some way. So that's what I'm working on. So I think it's just invaluable to have that kind of knowledge. I can do this. I'm not afraid to do this. So coming to America wasn't a huge deal. It became a bigger deal when I actually got here. Because you realize more than you knew when you get.
And the size of it?
The size of it and the kind of just that's what I'm looking for. You're here and I'm not going back. You've cut the rope to the mother country. We've got the same thing.
Absolutely. And this is what I would like to actually talk more about. Like, what is so great about America? Like everybody, like myself, coming from a third world country, Pakistan, born and raised over there. It makes total sense to me saying that I don't want to go back. I love people in general. So I, go to Karachi office very often, as you know. I'm stationed there for the last 8 months, spending 50% of my time in Karachi, 50% here in Atlanta. But in general, I like people, right? So I go back to Karachi, or I go back to Pakistan because the love of people. I love them. But you coming and born and raised in England, right? London, great city. Why you say the same thing, like you want to go back? Like, what is great about America, which London doesn't have?
It's that. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to kind of back up a little bit just to give a bit more context to kind of why we moved. Towards the end, this was kind of in 87, 88. I started with a small company called Immigrant Wine Bars, and they had some very lovely, select little wine bars in very bougie areas of London. And they bought a wine bar on the backside of Buckingham Palace. Literally on the backside.
Oh wow. Expensive area.
Very expensive area, very nice area. Very touristy as it probably is now, of course. Buckingham Palace is right there. And we started this restaurant. Charles Pullen, give me his name. But he was my assistant. He now is the principal and the reason for being for River Cafe in London, which is one of the top restaurants. But we worked together in this wonderful little wine bar, and we took it over, and it was a so little place, and we changed it completely. By the time we finished, I think we doubled the revenues there, and we had a huge clientele. That we had wiped out the previous people, I didn't pay the bills, too cheap, food was shitty.
Right.
So we just clean slates up here.
Yeah. So what did you do specially over there, which turned the revenue to like double the revenue?
Well, when we got there, I mean, the staff were mediocre, lack of training. They were robbing the place essentially. Money was going in the pockets. But luckily, what I learned from Tony Robbins is how to see all that. Do all the kind of the controls to work it out. So it took me about a week or two to narrow down who was doing at least the number of tickets and who was what was coming and what was going. So eventually cleaned house. Got a great new chef and great new team. I employed very attractive girls to because my clientele was predominantly male. Bankers from Salmon Brothers and so on and so forth. So we kind of changed the clientele, we had a different draw. So these bankers would come in and do, so we had a very different clientele at that point. So, and they would come for lunch for a 3-hour lunch. Come at 12 o'clock, finish at 3, very boozy lunch, champagne and blah, blah, blah.
Are they having like fun or they're
having fun? This is essentially So, expense accounts and so on and so forth. And, lovely girls and working there, and they were well trained. They were making money, we were making money. Then we did a renovation in the restaurant, boom, another kick up too. So we learned very quickly that what our particular niche was. Our clientele was amazing, and Prince David would come in, he would drink anything, for foreigners. Back in the day, Princess Diana's, security detail, all that kind of stuff. Even one of the Cray twins, one of the Cray twins.
Absolutely.
Gangsters.
I've seen the movie.
Right, well, this is the older brother.
Oh, okay.
So lots of characters were coming in. So great fun, but in 1991, the market crashed. And we had a terrible time. There's a good recession, essentially. My mortgage at my home went up to 16%. It was just insane. Our revenue started to drop. All the American bankers fled like there was a sinking ship. So we were thinking, well, what are we going to do? And I couldn't go back to Africa because I was on fire at that point. The apartheid was, rightly going, and it wasn't a place to be. And my wife is American, as you know. We said, look, why don't we give America a try? Let's ride the storm out, come here for a couple of years and see how that goes. My wife is a lawyer, as you know, and had to come over here to take the bar, in Florida, moved to Florida. So she did that ahead of time, which was good. And she said, oh, we're going to move to Tallahassee. I said, great, capital of Florida. And of course, the internet wasn't around. And I thought, Miami Vice, it's going to be like that. Nice little jacket, speedboats. As the plane was coming in, and I look out the window, there's like 2 tall buildings. I go, what? So the reality started to kick in. And we landed in this town, Tallahassee. I ended up loving it. But when we arrived there, it was a 2-horse town. All the restaurants were closed like 8 o'clock. Everything was fried food.
Where is she from?
She was from Tennessee.
Okay.
So a bit further north, as you know. So it was a culture shock for sure. Nothing but trucks. There's no subway. There's no tube station. There were no buses. There was no pedestrian culture. No one walks down the street. Everyone was driving. So I was going, good Lord, this is this is going to be tough. And it was tough. I mean, it was like, I'd go back and say, what am I doing? What have I done? Giving up all that, for this. And so it was probably about 3 or 4 months where I got a job, really. Because I was just kind of healing from the experience, moving. Did you have the same experience?
Well, my experience was very different, as you know. I came from Karachi, which is like London, right? Very diversified, very crowded, tall buildings, universities, busy, right? And I landed in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Right? And this was like January, so everything was white.
Right.
And I had never experienced snow growing up in Karachi.
Right.
We hardly have any winter, right? It's like Florida. You know, people just love to wear a jacket for the sake of having winter.
Right.
But then, it was a cultural shock for me too. Like after 8 o'clock, everything is black. You can't see anything. You don't see people around you.
Right.
So it was definitely very depressing for me.
Yeah.
First few 8-9 months I was here. Luckily, I was traveling a lot back then.
Right.
But definitely, it was a cultural shock. So going back to your marriage, where did you meet your wife, and how come she was in London with you, even though she was born and raised in Tennessee?
Well, she was over there interning on BUNAC, which is the British University, the American University Exchange Program.
Okay.
So she had a 6-month visa to intern over there in a law firm, which she actually never ended up doing anything. She came to work for the restaurant, Tony Rooms. So she worked with me for a while.
Okay.
Terrible employee. But anyway,
She was
yeah, she was. No, she was great. So we actually met there.
Okay.
And kind of very whirlwind kind of relationship, really. And we got married within 6 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is so all very quick.
That's good.
So anyway, so she was a lawyer. But at that time she was not. But when we came over here, obviously she got a bar, in Florida, Tennessee, and she can practice all over.
Yeah.
But as you quite rightly say, when you arrived here, it is a culture shock. Even though we speak English, as an English American, they say we're common people separated by a common language, and we're quite different.
Yeah.
The language in England is, I say, largely, what's the word I'm looking for? It's multi-leveled, and here it takes a while to learn how communication works here.
Yeah.
It's much more direct.
Yeah. And this is very interesting for people, especially born and raised in Pakistan. Like when I remember when I came to the United States, they were correcting me for some pronunciation. Like for example, I used to say schedule as opposed to schedule.
Yeah.
And I would say inventory as opposed to inventory, right? And when people used to say, why do you say inventory? And I'm like, well, because this is British accent.
Right.
And they're like, but you're not British. And I'm like, do you know the history of Pakistan? Right?
No.
So, this is very interesting to hear from somebody who was born and raised in London. They also had to learn the language.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even on the phone, I remember, they used to complain about support guys talking to them, right? They would say something like, they don't speak our language. So at first, because we did not have the exposure, what we were thinking is they might be talking about, you're not able to speak proper English.
Right.
But they were not mentioning that. What they were saying is, I'm an accountant, I speak accounting.
Right.
These guys are technical guys, and they speak technical language, right? So that's a language better, right? And that's what you're referring to, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even just having that the English pronunciation of inventory and schedule, to add that new complex delivery to it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Makes it even worse.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And imagine me being somebody who was born and raised in Karachi.
Right.
Went to another city just to attend a wedding of my friend, and then went to another city to get visa. And from there, I flew for the first time, just by myself, to the United States. So it was a huge shock in terms of how big the world is.
How old were you then?
25.
So we were traveling pretty much the same age.
Yes, but the exposures are very different. Like I was born in a household where in my neighborhood, the neighborhood was not that safe. So my mom and dad, they were very protective of us. They did not allow us to go out and play with the boys on the street. We were not allowed. So literally, a school van would pick me up from the gate and drop me off at the gate. I'm only allowed to come out of my house and watch other kids play.
Oh, really?
I was not even allowed to play with them because my mom was so worried that I would learn bad habits,
Right.
bad language. And these kids are not into study, so
Right.
they just wanted us to focus on study. So all I did first 25 years of my life is focusing on my education. And of course, being somebody, right?
Yeah.
Trying to do something better for my family, myself. So I still remember, this is, it's really surprising to a lot of people, those who know me, that after spending, I think 9 months here in the United States, somebody asked me, did you go watch a movie over the weekend? What do you do over the weekend? And I'm like, I work.
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? You don't go out, have fun,
Right.
you don't have friends, you don't go to a bar, you don't have a girlfriend here, and like, normal questions people ask, right? And I'm like, no, first of all, before leaving Pakistan, my parents said we need to get married. Because we know, if you go there without getting married, you're going to bring a blonde with you. We don't want that.
Right.
The second thing is, over the weekend I'm busy working.
Right.
And then I asked, like, what do other people do? Right? And they're like, well, they go watch movies.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So reality is, first 25 years of my life, I was so focused on education and doing something for myself where I really did not have time to do all of these kind of fun activities.
Yeah.
And even today, I tell my
But was it time or just not knowing that that's what?
I think I did not have the time. That was not my priority.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Right.
I grew up in a city like Karachi.
Right.
I knew a lot of people. But my time was well spent on either, doing something productive for myself or for others.
Right.
Either I was in school or I was working. There was no time left. I mean, I still remember, like, when I was in my master's, I was in my master's in computer science. I would go to university because in Karachi, you have to go to school every day.
Right.
It's not like, you don't have a class on one day. It's not like that, right? Every day you have a class.
Right.
And it starts at 8 in the morning and it goes to 3 in the afternoon. So there are gaps, but, you have classes.
That's a solid schedule.
Yes, yes. You have to follow the schedule.
Yes, schedule.
Yeah. So I would come back home and I started tutoring. So I was teaching 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th standard, 12th standard, right? So that would pay for my education as well as supporting my family. So I would start at 3 until midnight. Straight.
Wow.
Right?
That's very impressive. As a 25-year, that's
much younger than that, right? I came to the United States as a 25-year-old, so I'm talking about 21, 20, and 19, 17, right? And then after midnight, I would take my bike and I would go to one of my friend's house. And I'm so tired that even though my other friends are there so that we can do combined study, I would go and sleep.
Right.
And that friend of mine, he was very kind that, he would provide us the room and everything, but he would say, I'm not going to give you pillows so that we all can sleep, right? And there were like 5 of us. So I would sleep in my helmet.
Oh, really?
And it was so interesting, Hugo, that you can actually have a very nice sound sleep in a helmet because the great support you get in the back, as well as it's soundproof.
Yeah, soundproof.
Right? So even if they're having a lot of fun and they're making noise, I'm sleeping. But the flip side of
that picture.
And the flip side of this is that because of those friends, I was able to do really well in school. They would spend hours going through chapters and topics and all of that. And I would wake up in the middle of night, 2-3 hours later, and they would feed me something that was left over, and then they would teach me the topic, and I would be because I'm fresh. I just took a nap, power nap, and I was able to grasp all of that knowledge, and I was able to retain it. And luckily, just because of my great friends, I was able to do really well in school.
Oh wow!
And sometimes their marks were much less than mine, just because of the fact that they learned the hard way.
You absorbed it.
Absorbed it, and I learned the easy way.
And you can regurgitate it, very well.
Yeah, and this is because of those friends of mine. And that's why I truly believe that I'm a product of a lot of people around me, just like yourself. I learned from you and from everybody. Even I learned from my kids. They are the people who helped me becoming who I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
They played a huge role at the peak of my life. Otherwise, I would be very lonely, doing all what I would have done.
Right.
So going back to your wife, what is one thing you loved about her? Because I'm assuming that when you met her, you probably have some friends in London, or you maybe in South Africa you met somebody. What was so special about her that you said, no, this is the one I was spending much of my life?
Well, it's funny, I just got off of kind of a long relationship, a year before, maybe less than that. You kind of just know. I mean, you've probably been through the same experience. I think it's all sorts of different things. Obviously, we got on very well together. We kind of share the similar kind of family life growing up. So, and obviously she's got there gorgeous, and I was, get the seal up pretty quick, before she sees other guys in town. But no, and that was like in 1987.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen your pictures. You're very handsome.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, yeah, he's giving me prescriptions. But no, so very quickly, and so we got married. We came over here. We got married in the Smoky Mountains.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, all the family was coming over, and it was like we got married in the woods. Yeah. Had the preacher Billy Bob came, got the tractor and married us. And we had a great time. It was, and gosh, I mean, she's put up with me for that long.
Yeah.
And in my profession, in our profession, we work very hard, long hours, you travel a lot.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That's tough.
It's tough on the woman, it's tough on kids and home. So the fact that you and I can do it, we've done it, and obviously you're doing very successfully, is a testament to your wife, to your boys.
Absolutely.
And just your support, friends and family. I think, coming over here, as we did, obviously she's got a very strong family here. She's got 3 siblings as well, and mom, matriarch. And I didn't have any of that support here. And losing having my brothers be at home, my friends, my friend group.
Right.
Can I go to the pub? Let's go to the pub. No, there's no one here.
Yeah.
And that was the deepest, saddest moment for me.
Yeah.
It's like, what I've done, and so I did get a job, and I got a job in Killarney Country Club in Tallahassee, which was pretty much one of the only clubs in town. I wandered in there, and a wonderful GM, who I still know to this day, he's retired recently, gave me a job and said, okay, I need an operations manager. I said, oh man, and had a great time. It was a club that was always kind of, money's coming to the front door, get out the back door. We kind of managed to bounce the checkbook every year. It wasn't flush with cash. But in so doing, you learn how to manage the books and manage the expectation level and all sorts of stuff within the bounds of your checkbook.
Yeah.
So it was a very valuable lesson to me to get into country clubs. That was my first kind of sojourn into that, that kind of part of the business.
Yeah.
Golf, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm the worst golfer in the world. But anyway, it exposed me to all that. And you had rooms there as well, and colleges and so on. So I was there for a couple of years, and then eventually it was time to move in a bigger city. We loved it. I learned how to scuba dive and sail. We go to the beach every weekend. So I had lots of things that I actually ended up loving the place.
And so far you don't have any kids?
No kids. We had kids, 13 years after we were married. And we didn't even know where the kitchen was in our house. We'd go out to eat all the time. Suddenly the kids like, oh my God. Fridge, food. So again, another change of life. But no, at that time we were kid free. So and we decided to move. Atlanta was close to our mom in Tennessee. It was a good sounding board in between both Tennessee and Florida. Right in the middle. And so Atlanta was a place. And so she got a job in Atlanta. I followed, like a good husband as I am. And by pure chance, after a couple of months of being depressed again and here, where my buddy learning a whole other group of friends in a place that is probably hotter than we were in Florida.
Yeah.
So, and I literally had a little ad in the paper because there really was no cell phones or anything like that back then. So I chopped this little ad out. It's looking for an F&B director, manager. Didn't say where it was, just a number. So I called them. And they called, oh, Capital City Club. I said, no, what? And I said, I'm, applying for the job. It's okay, come and see us. So I went there and filled the application out. Didn't hear from them. And eventually I heard back and they said, yes, come and see it. And arrived there, and it's lovely, gorgeous, and spectacular. I mean, compared to another club, which was lovely as it was in Tallahassee, this was like
top notch.
Top notch. And very used to the level of experience I had at Boodles in London where I had training. And did the interview and so on and so forth. And they said, look, what we're going to do is the manager at the time. We want to make you a member for the weekend. And we want you to go through every single department experience at all. And I want you to have your experiences listed out, good, bad, and look indifferent. Lay it all out for them. And I said, okay, absolutely, I'd love to. And they called me back and said, this is the weekend we're going to do it again, you have the number. And again, technology was not there, they really couldn't get it. Where's this guy? We had so many numbers where you can. But so I kind of formatted this whole, kind of review essentially, and submitted it. Didn't hear back for a while. Okay, maybe it didn't work. Then they called back and said, "Hey, we'll see. Come and see us." So I went in there, and Dave Fleer, who's being a great mentor of mine, and Randy Delaney was the club manager there. And they sat down and said, we read the report, and we love what we just put down there. It's going to reflect some of the things that we see and what we want to do, and blah, blah, blah. And they say, can you fix it? And I said, yeah, of course. No, I said, I think so. I mean, what I know. I was a lot more confident. And I said, I remember saying this to Randy. I said, look, I tell you what, I'll do the first month. No pay.
Oh, wow.
Because I just felt good about the club, I felt good about this experience. I said, look, if money's in the way, which is stupid, naive of me, so you can't do that. But I said, look, I'll do it now. To see if people give me money, see what I can do. Or you can see what I did. He said, well, that's nonsense, and they offered me a job, ultimately.
That's awesome.
And then I was training with the guy I was replacing. Which was absolutely awful. A thing you should never do. Even though there's a kind of a pull, you follow that guy. No, get rid of them. Don't do that. And it ended up being, I think, one of the best jobs that I've ever had. I loved it, truly loved it.
So how long did you work for Capital City?
We worked on two separate occasions. From 93 to 2012. And as food service director, and then ended up being the AGM, I think, at that time, my time I left. Overseeing downtown Brooklyn. Great team, fantastic culinary. Everything was really very well, very well. And I was fortunate to be, by pure chance, at a CMA meeting at Atlantic Country Club, and got to meet the then the general manager of Atlantic Country Club, who'd been there, I think, 45 years. I mean, like a legend. This was a legend.
Ray Cox? What was his name?
Henry here.
Okay.
And I think he's from Hungary. He was a lovely guy. And he was retiring. And long story short, interviewed, and the PGA were doing the search. And I interviewed him. They eventually said, make the first cut. That's very good. No harm, no foul. Have a great job here. And it wasn't but a month later they came back and said, well, we've reconsidered. Okay. Took me that long to reconsider. I figured something China there.
Exactly.
So I went back and did the whole re-interview again, which was great. Ended up being offered a job there. It's a very particular setup there, not quite the traditional setup you'd have in clubs, which is a bit of a challenge. But a great membership, phenomenal course, phenomenal club. And so I did that for about 4 years. And managed to get to the club, on the platinum list from nowhere to number 64, which is great, in the top 100. again, good training, good hiring, putting the right people on the right seat of the bus. You talk about that with Jim Collins. My favorite book, every club.
Good to great.
Good to great.
Yeah.
Every company should read that.
Yeah.
So we put the right people in the right seat. Some people need to get off the bus. I've got some new people on the bus.
You're going in the right direction.
Yeah, we point in the right direction. And it really works. And the board liked what we did. I put a whole new fitness center in there. Put a new tennis director, a new fitness director. North Star came in, which kind of took us to a different level of ability to do things. Bookings for example, for workout, fitness, and so on. We could track it. All sorts of stuff. So lots of great things there. And then I was called back one day by Capital City, saying, "Hey, we've just spent $10 million on a big pool complex in Melbourne, and would you be interested in coming back?" Because they knew I was happy there, but I wasn't enthralled. It was a smaller club, 650 members. Lovely, great, but I was used to the big balls, 2,000 people, and the multi facility club. I just love that dynamic. More people. More resources to do what you want to do. So Atlanta Country Club was great, and I think at that time they'd changed tremendously now, I think, because things have changed. It felt like a Ferrari that only had 3 seats, and just one more gear, we would have got there. But again, that's financially driven. They just needed more money to get to that next level. They've since tuned that, and they are doing that, which is great. But for me, I need to get back into that big club. So Matt and I hashed out a deal, so I went over there as the AGM, which was great. Arrived, and it was fantastic. They had a great Ferrari. They had a V6 in it, so they were V8. From the standpoint of being able to run this huge $10 million pool operation, which sounds like nothing. But the revenues eventually, once we got it tuned up and put a bar in, because there's no bar in the pavilion, and taking the revenues to $1 million in the first year, just in a pool. So it was fun. So being back in the language. So you're hiring people, you're having fun doing what you're doing. You've got people that are around you having fun what they're doing. And everyone knows the mission. This is what we're going to do. Everyone's in the right seat, in the right bus. So it was electric. It was fun. I turn around the corner into the club and what's today going to look like? That's what I wanted to. Very rarely would it end up being it'd be something different. But you're always going one step forward. And that's hospitality. And the thing I learned about hospitality when I got to America is it's not service. Service is what you do for people. I bring you an eggs and bacon, Chardonnay. Hospitality is everything that goes around the support side. It's how I make you feel. When I come into the club, Shazad, fantastic. Remember I called you and said, "You love cheeseburger, you know that." And whenever Shazad came in, I said, "Chef, Shazad, cheeseburger." No, but I mean, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
You feel special. So we learned, we have a pool of people. Well, if we don't know everything about them, then we've done the wrong business. So learning about our members was the key. Having our staff learn about members, not keep it to themselves. We know Mr. Smith loves to have doers, he wants to have them on the side. He loves Silver Oak, and he wants to like Big Bertha drivers. So we're kind of gathering there, we're connecting dots, essentially. And the more dots you can connect, the better. If I know you're related to, somebody else in the club, or we've got a business relationship, and I know you both together, and I can talk to you on that level, and I can introduce you and say, "Hey, Shazad, you've not met Bill, he's in the same business, probably get on in the bar." And so you're connecting dots. I'm not bringing someone with cocktails. I am just helping you with your experience. Everything now is experiential. No one talks about service anymore. I want an experience. Look at the river cruises. It's all about experience.
And this is very interesting what you said about service versus hospitality, because as you know, North Star has a lot of great trainers who go out and
we did.
Implement software. And a lot of time they come back and they tell me stories how club allowed them to experience the club as a member. They invite their families to come and stay in a rooms, and experience the club. So the idea, what I'm learning from you, is that they would like you to experience the hospitality.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they end up letting you use the club, so that essentially they're expecting this kind of service from you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? In return, they want you to see what they're offering so that you can reciprocate it in terms of providing that kind of service. And this is a great opportunity for a lot of young individuals, those who are trying to come into this industry, whether in the capacity of a project manager, as a trainer, or maybe a support individual answering these phones. And as you know, if you're working for hospitality, you have certain standards, right? Whatever the standards you're following and the kind of service you're offering to your customer, you end up expecting the same level of experience
Absolutely.
from the people you're getting service from, right?
Yeah.
So every time when you go to a restaurant, you being a general manager of a country club and being an AGM for such a large club, you expect certain level of professionalism from them. So help us understand, as a support individual who's talking to somebody on a phone, trying to solve their problem. Of course, they're not trying to solve the problem of a life, they're trying to solve the problem, whether this is a point of sale issue, this is a accounting issue.
Right.
What is the most important thing for our support guys, our trainers, to keep in mind in terms of providing them a service, of course, but how can we change their experience? Like, what should we focus on?
That's a great question. It's a very big question. I think, and having worked with North Star as well, and understanding that, clubs are in the business of giving a great experience, on all different levels and various different, whether it be golf, tennis, pickleball, or whatever. Giving someone a great experience, and they work for that experience, And I think just because we are the givers of experience, having someone understand the experience we need from, in this case, support, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I think the trainers are very fortunate because they do experience it. Deb and all wonderful people who stay at these great clubs and get that aha moment.
Yes.
And I'm just going to back up a little bit. There's one wonderful young man that we had at Capital City, and there's a scholarship, large that happens at Cherokee every year. For those that go into the Yates Scholarship, which is a golfing scholarship here for GSGA. And these were first generation American, well, actually they're born in Bosnia. They came over here as a refugee program and worked with the club. Lovely, and they were, very smart. They were Georgetown. And one of them, who was a lovely young man, hardworking, hard studying, and we're always trying to get across to him, this is what we do, our service, our culture is this. Put this nice and full straight, it's all crisp, perfect. And one day he came back from this lunch, he got his scholarship, he came back from lunch, with Cherokee, and they did a fantastic job there, as you know. And he knocked on my door. He came in and he said, Hugo, I get it. Because he received that service when he went for the lunch at Cherokee. All this stuff. Because he had no shared experience of it, apart from giving it to the club, not really understanding what he's giving, just doing what he's told to get to that level. But when he experienced it and went to the club and had lunch there, and was being given the experience that he gives at the club every day. And he came back and had the wherewithal and presence of mind to come back and say, you got to get it. And that, I think, is probably a lesson there for anybody, particularly in support, where you're thousands of miles away, may not have a shared experience of the experience of the club, and the level of experience, of service they need, experience really. How can you give something you don't really know what it's about? And I think your trainers get it because they've experienced, not see it, they can taste it, they know what to expect. And it's a disadvantage for the crew back in Karachi because they may not be exposed to it. So really, I'm not sure how one can educate that. You can, of course, I think you have to work on the program, but I think given the expectation, you're in America, so everything has to be like immediate, and rightly so. Different countries have different kind of immediacy. But But if you're sitting at the front desk and your computer's down or something's wrong, you know, hey, you want real quick. You know, how we deal with that, you know, is probably a lesson by itself.
Yeah.
But I think if one can do that in Karachi and expose them to that on some level, you know, some guys, yes, I'm sure,
absolutely.
but across the board, if that's a training thing that comes in, it's okay, culturally, yes, we're in Karachi, yes, we're with North Star, but the culture is actually American in this case, or it could be Australian.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, you know, the expectation might be different from the receiver's end. You know.
Yeah, thank you very much for this advice, because I truly believe that you do not know any magic, you know the tricks. You can't really teach a magic to anyone, but you can teach these tricks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the formula I always use, that, you know, I try to explain things to a 10-year-old in a way that if I can explain it to a 10-year-old, I'm sure a professionally hired in a support team can also understand that. So I truly feel that I'm blessed that I'm able to experience these things, but I think the way you put together the words in terms of experiencing, you know, the hospitality versus providing a service, how you differentiate between the two, I think this is giving me a very clear picture of what needs to be communicated. Because a lot of time when these support guys are receiving phone calls, they're receiving phone calls of a frustrated customer.
Yeah.
They're frustrated, right? So one thing, of course, is solving their problem, but how they're going through the whole process of solving the problem, right, is what the experience is.
Right.
Whether you
from the users.
For the users, right? So the focus should be on the customer experience, not only in solving the problem. Because this is one of the things I've noticed, that our guys are busting their butts behind the scene.
Yeah.
And they're thinking they're spending their weekends, you know, they did not even go home. They're waiting for another guys to come and fix it, and they're not able to provide that experience to the customer by informing them after a certain period of time that, you know, I'm still here for you. After spending 8 hours at the shift, I'm staying back for another 4 or 5 hours trying to solve this problem because, you know, I'm here. But because they're so much focused on solving a problem as opposed to giving the experience, they're lacking in their follow-ups with the customer in terms of informing them where we stand in terms of resolving their problem. We just focus on solving the problem.
Yeah.
I think this is the biggest
thing. A myopic focus.
Yes. And I think this is what we need to focus as a company, as you know, a leader in the company. This is a message I'm going to give and emphasize on to people that, you know, focus on the customer experience, not only giving them a great service, but give them a great experience. Because the way you make somebody feel is what they will remember. They may not remember the words, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I think we are a true picture of, you know, that experience. You came to the booth, became a fan of North Star. I met you, and because you remember the cheeseburger, right? We became close. And very recently, we worked together at North Star.
I know. Full circle.
Full circle, right? So small world. So
well, I think, you know, it's you basically got the quote there from Maya Angelou that says, you know, you may not know what you've done or what you said, but I will definitely remember the way you made me feel. You know, and it's a fantastic saying because we kind of summed it up, didn't it? You know, and that's the experiential side.
Yes.
You know, okay, you haven't fixed my problem, but I don't feel as bad.
Yes.
You know, you know, whatever it is. And I think just a little kind of sidebar on that is when things at the club don't always go well. There are going to be some things that go wrong. It's just huge. Something's going to go wrong. And when it does, how we are judged is like how we react and adjust to that problem, to that guest, to that member. You know, if we ignore it, push it off, and say, oh, you know, whatever. It's not going to go away. It's just going to get exponentially worse. But if you comping a meal is not a way of curing the problem. How can I make you feel better? What can I do for you? How can I make this better for you? You know, because they'll tell you. You know, and I'll do that. I'll do more. And guess what? I'll call you tomorrow and say, how you doing? You know, and I think that follow up there, so it feels like a personal thing. I don't know what support does. Obviously, I was exposed to it to some degree, but the follow-up, I'm sure there are guys in Michael and all the guys follow up the next day.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yep.
We've got some gems because they've been battle hard.
Yep.
They know it.
Yeah.
The new ones coming in who may not know all that or be exposed to it, know what to do. So I think there's an ability there, within that Jim Collins book again, is having those conversations, being brutally honest about yourself, as a company, and saying, well, we know we've got this elephant in the room, and it's okay, but let's have some really determined conversation about how we can make it better. And it's going to be like eating an elephant. It's going to be very small bites at a time. But it's incremental. Then the flywheel gets going. It's positive, going in the right direction. It's not reactive. It's proactive. And I think so. And having worked there, and I loved it. It's a reactive business, isn't it? And maybe that's the nature of the beast. But how can you become proactive about it? I think you do, obviously, with we do, or did. With user conferences and conferences around town, very proactive. How do we get everyone to go to those things? Maybe it's a different medium, but anyway, I think from Karachi, from the service standpoint, which is obviously something that we talk about a lot. There are things we can do. I say we.
Absolutely.
And it would be exciting to do that.
And I'm very excited, being in Karachi since October of last year, because I'm able to experience what they're experiencing over there. I kind of forgot. The case of Karachi, I've been here 20 years, living there and experiencing their challenges, their point of view, is definitely helping me understand how can I provide help. And we talk about this a lot. It's very easy for us to criticize and say nasty things about the situation, but as a leader, I need to step up and I need to provide them the support they're looking for. And unless I understand the problem, how can I provide a solution?
Exactly.
So obviously they have their own challenges, which I need to address. At the same time, I need to make it so simple that we can inject a lot more talented people and they enjoy coming to work. And unfortunately, health is not a priority for a lot of people. We are very fortunate that we can go to the gym, we can sleep, we don't have issues of electricity, internet and all of those things. But even in a city like Karachi, if you're in an office, of course you're in an air-conditioned environment, but there is no guarantee when you go home because of the load factor. A lot of people flew from all over the country to Karachi to work. It's a metropolitan city. The load of work doesn't allow the electric department to provide electricity throughout the whole day, So they may have a load shedding for an hour, 2 hours. People, suffer. And they go home. It's warm, And even if their
sleep is not great.
Sleep is not great, So we have to be sympathetic to the person, So I'm trying to solve these kind of problems at the same time, trying to inculcate a culture over there where they give importance to their health. Because if they are healthy, only then they are fruitful to their families and employees and whoever they care for.
Well, because I think I did see that they're putting a gym, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And childcare.
Childcare and gym as well as a trainer. So we have a very nice trainer. He is focused on 3 aspects. I think you remember, I actually personally hired him when I moved there, and then I loved that whole idea so much that your mental health, your physical fitness, and then nutrition. These are 3 things due to which I hired him. And because I love the results with me, I was like, maybe I need to engage him for the entire company. So now he's working with all of us. He put together a program for the entire company where everybody can participate and he can monitor. So I'm really hoping the way we are caring for individuals over there, we will see good results.
That's great. I mean, that really is the new way. When I was growing up in the business, it was like you had to make it. It's a school of hard knocks. If you survived it, you'll make it. But now it's very different. You've got to embrace staff, look after them, nurture them. Very valuable resource. And particularly with more staff or anything, because you've got the intellectual capital. You can't afford to lose that.
Absolutely.
All that you put in, the training, the hours, whatever it is. But I think having those honest conversations with my teams in our clubs and saying, you know, how can we get there? How can we polish the stone, as we used to call it? You know, where, you know, how can we? It's not big things all the time. It's little things all the time.
Yeah.
You know? But it's got to be woven into the fabric of that dress.
Yeah.
You can't just do it once and think it's going to happen ever.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the training manual. It becomes part of the culture of what we do.
Yeah.
Whether it be in the restaurant or the guy running the golf cart to you're polishing the clubs on the driving range. You know. So I think you're doing great with that. I think, you know, having that nurturing your staff, looking after them, real, you know, love for your people. You know, to be better, healthier, want to come to work.
Absolutely.
So that's great. So you've got the carrot.
Yeah.
Now what's the stick? You know, we have to learn the stick.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all roses all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we learn from our mistakes, and that was, you know, something that we would do. We would talk about certainly in our meetings, or should we say, even our, you know, after a big event, you know, where do we hit it out of the park? Where can we do better next time? You know, blah, blah, blah. And then always, again, you're polishing that stuff. Yeah. It's a little bit from the beginning, but by the time the end of the year has happened, you polish it to a nice shine. Yeah. And it becomes part of your onboarding. Yeah. This is our culture. This is what we do. Yeah.
And since I moved to Karachi, I'll tell you some of the experiences, Hugo, which is a challenge for me as a person too. Is like when we talked about how can we provide a system or environment where people feel that, you know, they're getting the support they're looking for.
Right.
Because as a leader, I couldn't believe that my job is to take care of people, and people's job is to take care of the customer. Right? Because I'm not the one who's talking to the customer, they are.
Right.
So I need to make sure I take care of them. But at the same time, it's not like I'm going to work with average or below average individual.
Right.
So I started putting together a system where every quarter they're going to be evaluated. Given the feedback so that they have room to improve.
Yes.
Because think about it, this was my observation in the first 3 months, that we hired a great individual after thorough, you know, screening process of interview and test and all of that. And after 6 months or 7 months, I get a news from their manager that he's not performing. So there must be something wrong with the management where this guy is not able to perform, because we brought the best talent. We brought the best talent in our company, but what happened to him, right? So nobody's thinking about him being a human being who has a heart, and thinking of the heart count as opposed to head count. Always looking at the dollar amount and looking at this much money I'm spending on this guy. Nobody's talking to him and saying, you know, what happened to you, right, in the past 6 months? Did you get married, right? Did you have a bad marriage?
Or someone's sick in your home?
Yeah, somebody's sick. Are you sick? Are you struggling with something, right? So having those kind of uncomfortable conversation is not something which was a culture. So when I introduced that, obviously I got some feedback from people that I'm being too soft with people. But at the same time, some people gave me the feedback that I'm too harsh with people. Because, you know, if you're not willing to work with below average individuals, you don't have a choice other than giving them the warning, and then if they don't approve, then you have to part ways. So in some cases I have to part ways with people, those who've been with us for 19 years. Right? So obviously, a lot of people question me in terms of how come this person survived for that long? Right? So I'm not saying that specific individual I'm talking about did not, you know, work great. Sometimes it's also a change of direction for the company, right? When you were here 19 years ago, you were a different individual. You grew into a different individual. Now you want to steer your career in a different direction, and company would like to, you know, steer in a different direction. Sometimes there's a, you know, change of management style, and you know, you have conflicts, and you have to deal with them professionally.
You do,
And parting ways is also a way.
It is part of the way. I think, you know, well, that journey, you know, the journey of an employee, you know, the excitement coming in, like, I'm going to rule the world, I'm going to change everything here, blah, blah, blah. You know, you sit at your desk, and then obviously, you know, reality kicks in. You know, okay, well, what have I been given to do? You know, I've got tools to do it. You know? And I think now you've added obviously the wellness aspect, the childcare, you've got a lot of support there for people. Having the evaluation process be robust, and I'm talking about job description, very, very key. And you think, well, they can put it in their drawer and forget about it. Well, no, it comes out every year when we do the evaluation, because it's part of the evaluation. Of those 10 questions, or whatever it might be, 20, what are the most important things for your particular job? Now, it'd be very different for Akbar, who does something else. Your top 3 there. These are the main reasons I need you. These are the key things I need you to do. And this is where you stack up on, within your peers. And having that evaluation process be robust, so you're measuring against your the goals, which we talk about too. Because without goals, you have no direction.
Realistic goals. Realistic goals.
Realistic goals, absolutely. And I think we've done it a number of ways in my career. One is that I would give the goals, or Matt would give the goals. The overall, which is kind of a summation of everything. But giving it back to the employee and say, okay, give me your goals. I want some professional goals, which how you're going to improve. I want to see these kind of areas covered. So you're kind of guiding them. It comes from the review. And then I want your personal. So you're going to work out, and you'll lose 10 pounds, or become the chair, I don't know, whatever. Tell me what you want to do. And then we're going to measure that. It's not just every year, because the year's too long, I forget what you're going to do. Do every quarter. And it's just a little sit down, it's not a peer review. It's like, hey, we're right on course, you are doing fantastic here. Can you see a little work here, right, look at the best part of it. 3 months. Where you go. So everything's incremental, but it's on the go.
And I think I talked to you about this V2 Mom, where every quarter I will look at V2 Mom for my quarter and say, this is my vision, this is my value, this is how I'm going to do it, this is my method or methods to do this, and when I'm doing it, these are the obstacles I'm going to have. And then how am I going to measure it? Whatever the vision I have to, achieve it and measure it. So I always talk about V2 Mom as a structure. You can use this structure in meetings. Like, what's the vision you have for the meeting? What's the value of this meeting? How are you going to do that with the methods, right? And when you're having a meeting, then you have some obstacles, and people have arguments and all of that. And the success of that meeting can be measured by, this action items and whatever. So I try inculcating that and encourage you as well. But this is a process. This cannot be done in like 6 months. And especially when you're dealing with 500 individuals, and you're trying to change their thinking process, it takes time. And we are like heart surgeons. The heart is still pumping. The company is thriving, company is working, everybody's... You can't stop. Yeah, you can't stop, right? At the same time, you're trying to change the direction, give them a new thinking process. It takes time. By the way, we also started a library over there. So, big about books. And we talked about, Jim Collins, all good to great. So we also started a library over there so that people have the culture of, borrowing a book, reading about it, and talking about it. And maybe we end up having a book club where, we sit in a circle and we talk about a book, because that will help each other bounce off ideas, what you learned from the same book I read versus, so we're trying to build that culture for sure, where when they come to work, it's not just about, finishing their work and achieving certain goals. Regarding the evaluation, Hugo, I also want to talk to you about the difference between the reward for goals, achieving goals versus the behavior. Like, for example, every single time I'm talking to a manager, they always emphasize on the fact that they are achieving their goals. So their focus is performance. In some cases, I pointed out, it's not about the performance I want to reward you for that. I want to reward you for the behavior. And they did not get it, what I'm trying to tell them. Because it's a cause and effect, right? It's not about how you're achieving, it's not about what you're achieving, it's about how you're achieving it. So you have to do it the proper way. So as a manager, you understand that you're responsible for people, people are responsible for work. The relationship is very human. It's work related, it's transactional, right? You want them to work, they need to get that work done. So there's no confusion about it. But in order to get that result, how are you going to get that result? Are you being abusive to your team members in terms of asking them to stay back for longer hours when you actually needed more team members in that team, or more talented people in that team, right? So I want you to elaborate on the fact that we should not reward people on performance, we should reward people on behavior.
That's an interesting question. I know the evaluations that we would do, and again, it varies for supervisor from standpoint of the quantitative number of pages and aspects of that review, from just an hourly employee, but both equally as important. But it would all aggregate together at a particular score. So you may have the behavioral aspect, you'll have your goal achievement aspect, you'll have your polite right to work on time, all the various different things, but it'll aggregate to a score, to a single score.
And how often were you doing it?
We would do the big annual ones annually. So depending on your department, it might be a January, February, March cycle. But you would do it quarterly as well, or 6 monthly, again, depending on the level of position. And all you're doing there is kind of refreshing people. We all suffer from this. You do the goals, you put them in a drawer, and you go, oh my God, it's November. What did I do? We're humans. So I think having that kind of little regular meeting, how are we doing against our goals? Are we achieving it? Are we 90% there? So you're kind of monitoring. It's a little bit of a positive pressure for the employee, because you kind of know the ones that are perhaps need a little more encouragement, where it might be some kind of nudge in direction, either encouragement-wise, I'm supporting you on that, or giving training, what's going on. Again, going back to sitting down with the employee, what's going on in your life? We've noticed this happening. Can we get back on track? So yes, there's the annual big one, which may be tied to remuneration. But there's also the incremental one, which is not tied to remuneration necessarily. It might come into play when it comes to advancement. You've been killing it for the last 9 months. We've got a position coming up. I think you might be right for it. And then having that person, yes, I think I want to be part of it. Then we also do at the clubs is we would test them. We'd give them the psychological testing. And I've used that at both clubs to great advantage. And it just lets you know about the employee beyond the expertise of learning. Where they come from spiritually, humanity. Do they have a service heart? Are they willing to help others? Do they work together as a team, in a team? Because that can be, all fantastic A personalities in one team. Nothing's working. So it's understanding if you've got a deck of cards, I want one, ace of diamonds, second. So that kind of attitude testing, and there's lots of it out there, has been a key for me. It took a while to convince others in my more recent club, but I used it for Ladder Country Club to great advantage. It allowed me to know the other side of the story. And it's alarmingly accurate.
So thank you very much, Hugo, for all the insights and sharing the experience as well. Our last thing before we end this conversation is, what is one piece of advice you want to give to young individuals who are trying to make in the world, like my son, who's behind the camera?
He's killing already.
30-year-old. Or somebody who's in their early 20s and early 30s who's trying to make a difference in this world. What is your piece of advice, man?
Well, I think the thing that pays or can pay is learn on someone else's dime. So if you can go to school, do your internship, whatever it might be, and have them pay for your learning, so you're not leaving saddled with enormous amount of debt. So you kick off in the negative. So certainly from a financial pocketbook standpoint, that can be very useful. But you may also find in your internship that you found a place you really love to be, or a place you really hate to be. You want to be somewhere else. And then travel, if you can. If you're able to share someone else's experience. It hasn't got to be overseas, it could be to a different state, it could be somewhere where you're uncomfortable. And we've done it. We moved, haven't we? We felt uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
We couldn't be comfortable back in Rachi, back in London, but we decided we're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And guess what? I came here with maybe $300 and 200 cigarettes. Now I've invested well and we've all done well. So push your boundaries. Go somewhere where you feel uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. Not in that way. I'm saying you're now living on what you are naturally have. You're a go-getter. So learn fast. Someone else has done ideally, and then go out and kind of practice it. Maybe something you want to end up doing something completely different because you were a ski bum for a month. I want to be a ski lifter. Either way, you find a passion. Because your dad might want you to be a software engineer. You did like, no way. I want to be a video recorder or whatever. Or a great film director. Either way.
Great advice. So thank you very much for coming over and for your time and valuable feedback.
Thank you, Ben. Seriously. No, it's been great. It's been awesome. Thank you.